There's a moment, quiet but sharp, when a man looks around at his life and asks, "How the hell did I end up here?" Not just geographically or financially or in the company he keeps, but in the deeper sense, in the rhythm of his days, in the weight he carries, in the dull ache that lingers even when things are going well. He looks at the choices he made, the people he let in, the things he fought for, and wonders if any of it was ever truly under his control. And the world, always eager to soothe discomfort, tells him yes. Of course you're in control. You just need better goals, more discipline, a stronger mindset, manifestation, focus, grind harder. But what if this isn't true? What if the cruelty of life is not that you lost control, but that you never had it? Alan Watts once said, "You are not controlling the storm, and you are not lost in it. You are the storm." The illusion that you are steering this life, that you are the driver of the machine, is one of the most deeply embedded lies you were taught. And it's not just false, it's exhausting. Because when life veers off course, you blame yourself. When people leave, when things fail, when the map doesn't match the road, you think you messed up, that you didn't try hard enough, that you weren't strong enough. But what if the truth is that you were never behind the wheel? This realization can break a man, or it can set him free. If you're ready to explore that freedom, to look honestly at what happens when you stop gripping the wheel so tightly, stay with me. And if this message already resonates somewhere deep inside you, I invite you to subscribe, share this with someone you care about, and leave a comment below. By doing so, you help spread this reflection to other men who are also quietly asking themselves if they've ever really been in control at all. From the moment we're old enough to understand language, we're told a story, that we are the authors of our own destiny, that we can shape life like clay, bend it with willpower, conquer it with action. And so we grow up believing that if we don't have the life we want, it's because we didn't steer hard enough, we didn't grind long enough, we didn't want it bad enough. This belief becomes sacred. We don't question it, because to question it would mean admitting we're not in charge. And to admit that is terrifying. But sooner or later the cracks start to show. The promotion doesn't come. The woman you gave your heart to leaves. The body breaks. The plan collapses. You followed the rules. You set the goals. You visualized success. And still, life did what it wanted. Some fight harder. Others numb themselves. Some collapse. But a few, just a few, pause. They stare into the wreckage and whisper, "Maybe I was never steering this at all." That's when something begins to shift. Not suddenly, but deeply. Alan Watts described this as the falling away of the illusion of separateness. The ego, he said, imagines itself as the driver of the machine, separate from the world, issuing commands. But in truth, you are not a being in the universe, you are a process of it. Just as a wave is not separate from the sea, you are not separate from life. The idea that you are steering is an optical illusion. Convincing, yes, but still an illusion. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The man who begins to understand this doesn't become lazy or indifferent. He becomes still. There is a quiet power in no longer pretending. He acts, yes, but without the arrogance of control. He plans, yes, but without demanding outcomes. He lets go of the childish fantasy that he can outsmart the universe, and in doing so, he stops resisting what is. And that surrender isn't weakness, it's clarity, the kind that doesn't flinch when things fall apart, because he no longer believes it's a failure. It's just life, unfolding exactly as it must. Once a man sees through the illusion that he's steering life, he begins to feel the full weight of what that illusion cost him. All the pressure, all the guilt, all the shame of not being enough. Every moment of self-blame for things that were never truly his to control. The woman who left, the job that collapsed, the dream that died. He had thought he failed as a pilot, when in truth, he was never flying the plane. He was weather in the sky, a current in the sea, a voice in the choir of life. This doesn't make him less. It makes him real. Watts called this the great letting go, not as a retreat from life, but as an awakening into it. Before he had moved through the world with a kind of tension in his chest, a constant scanning of the horizon, waiting for life to obey. And every time it didn't, he doubled down, tried harder, worked longer, forced smiles, bit his tongue, performed. And still, the ground shook beneath him. Because life does not bend to control. It slips through it like wind through fingers. But no one told him that. They only told him to try harder. So he did, until he broke. But now, something quieter moves in. He no longer feels like he must command the river. He learns, instead, to swim with it. And this surrender, far from making him passive, makes him powerful. Because now he's not wasting energy on resistance. He's not fighting the current. He's using it. He becomes adaptive, like water. He stops demanding explanations from the world and starts watching it, feeling it, responding to it. He still acts, but from presence, not panic. And this changes everything. People around him notice something, though they can't name it. He's calmer, less reactive. There's a heaviness to his presence, but not a burdened one, a grounded one. He doesn't rush. He doesn't explain himself so much. He smiles less often, but when he does, it's real. Some find him cold. Others are drawn to him in ways they don't understand. He seems unaffected by praise or insult. He doesn't rise to bait, doesn't chase, doesn't cling, because he's not trying to steer anymore. He's being, fully. And this makes him free in a way that cannot be faked, because he no longer believes the lie that he must force life to love him. He is no longer the anxious captain trying to navigate a storm. He is the storm, alive, unpredictable, and at peace with it. Now, something even deeper begins to unfold. The man who once tried to dominate life now starts to observe it with curiosity. Where he once demanded, he now listens. Where he once insisted on answers, he now allows space for mystery. This is not because he has given up. It's because he has begun to see. Alan Watts described this shift as the transition from anxiety to alignment. Before, everything felt urgent. Every failure was a threat. Every success, a momentary breath before the next climb. But now, urgency dissolves. The world doesn't move slower, but he does. And that changes the entire experience of being alive. He realizes something most men never dare to admit. Much of his pain was self-inflicted, born not from what happened to him, but from his refusal to let go of control. The disappointments, the heartbreaks, the missed opportunities, they hurt more not because they were devastating, but because he had convinced himself that they weren't supposed to happen. And so instead of grieving, he blamed himself. Instead of healing, he clung to how things should have gone. This is the cruelty Watts pointed to, the inner war created by the belief that life is a machine you were meant to operate, when in fact, it's a dance you were meant to join. As he begins to live from this place of surrender, a strange kind of power awakens. It's not loud. It doesn't seek attention. It has nothing to prove, but it's there, in the way he breathes through conflict, in the way he no longer flinches at chaos, in the way he can sit in uncertainty without collapsing. He no longer needs life to cooperate to feel okay. He no longer needs people to understand him, validate him, choose him. He is no longer fueled by fear. And without fear, he's not weak. He's clear about what matters, clear about what is his to carry and what never was. This new clarity has a cost. He may lose people, the ones who depended on his need to please, the ones who were comforted by his self-doubt, the ones who only knew how to connect through shared complaint. Now that he's no longer seeking rescue, he becomes less relatable to those still drowning. His calm is mistaken for distance, his silence for arrogance, his ease for indifference. But that's the tension between appearance and essence. On the surface, he may seem detached, but inside, he's finally connected to himself, to the present, to the pulse of life that doesn't need to be gripped to be trusted. And maybe for the first time, he understands what Watts meant when he said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. The chase is over, the panic is gone, and what remains is not emptiness, but depth. A quiet, unwavering, almost holy kind of depth. As the man settles into this depth, something he never expected begins to happen. His capacity for joy quietly expands. Not the high, fleeting kind of joy that depends on achievement or praise, but the still, grounded kind that asks for nothing. It arrives in ordinary moments. The sun on his skin, the smell of something cooking, the sound of wind moving through trees. He finds himself moved, sometimes even to tears, by things he once overlooked. Because now he's no longer rushing through life in pursuit of control. He's present, and presence reveals beauty that control could never reach. He laughs more now, but not to impress. He laughs because he no longer carries the pressure of performing. He doesn't need to be the smartest man in the room, the most successful, the most desired. He's not trying to win anymore. And ironically, that's what makes him magnetic. When you meet a man who is at peace with not steering, who isn't caught in the grind of ego, you feel it. His words land differently. His silence holds weight. He doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't beg. His worth isn't on trial, so there's nothing to defend. This doesn't mean his life is free from pain. On the contrary, he still bleeds, still loses, still longs, but the pain no longer shatters him. He can sit with it, let it move through him, because he doesn't demand that life be painless. He knows now that peace is not the absence of chaos, it's the refusal to be owned by it. Where he once clung to outcomes, he now watches them come and go. He grieves when it's time. He lets go when it's time. And in that rhythm, he finds a strength that cannot be taught, only remembered. The more he releases the illusion of control, the more clearly he sees the game that others are still trapped in. The man who insists he must dominate to be respected. The one who clings to image. The one who drowns in busyness. He sees them, and he feels compassion, because he remembers what that felt like. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the constant fear that everything would fall apart if he stopped pushing. And now he sees what Watts meant, that we suffer not because life is cruel, but because we resist what is. And in resisting, we miss the grace that was always there, subtle, quiet, waiting. This man is no longer governed by illusion. He still dreams, but he doesn't attach his soul to outcomes. He still loves, but he doesn't try to possess. He still acts, but not to prove his existence. His movements are born of clarity, not compulsion. His silence is full, not empty. And slowly, without trying, he begins to influence others, not with force, but with presence, not with advice, but with example. And that, perhaps, is the most honest kind of leadership. Eventually, the man who no longer believes he's steering begins to live in rhythm with something larger than himself. He no longer wakes up thinking, "What must I conquer today?" But rather, "What is today asking of me?" That shift in perspective changes everything. He becomes more fluid, less defensive, more honest. And while others around him may still be lost in the constant demand to prove, improve, and outperform, he's no longer caught in that current. He still works, he still creates, he still commits. But it's not for status anymore, it's for sincerity. He does what feels aligned and lets go of the rest. This doesn't make him immune to discomfort. In fact, he may feel things more deeply than before, but now he doesn't see pain as a punishment. He sees it as part of the flow. There are storms, yes, but he is not trying to outrun them anymore. He's learned to walk through them barefoot, eyes open, heart soft. And oddly enough, that surrender makes him stronger than any kind of forced resilience ever did. Not hard like stone, but rooted like a tree. Not guarded like a fortress, but aware like a monk who's seen both heaven and hell, and calls them by the same name: impermanence. People start asking him questions, not because he preaches, but because something about him is unsettling in a comforting way. They wonder how he moves with so much ease when life is so chaotic, how he remains calm when others are spiraling, how he seems untouched by the constant noise of performance. But he doesn't give them techniques or formulas. He doesn't sell them 10 steps to peace. He simply tells the truth. I stopped trying to steer. And for those who are ready, that sentence is enough to change everything. What was once terrifying, the idea of not being in control, has become sacred. Because control, he now knows, was the enemy of intimacy with life. The tighter his grip, the more he missed. The more he insisted, the more he resisted. But now he touches life directly, without gloves, without armor, without needing to name every experience or understand every outcome. He lives not to dominate, but to witness, not to conquer, but to feel. And so the cruel joke becomes a quiet blessing. The truth that once shattered him, "You are not in control," has become the doorway to his freedom. Because once you stop steering, you start sensing. And once you start sensing, you begin to know. Not with the mind, but with the whole being. And that knowing is what finally brings you home. Not to safety, not to perfection, but to something far more honest, reality itself. And so the man, once broken by the idea that he wasn't steering his life, now walks in peace precisely because of it. What once felt like helplessness has revealed itself as harmony. What seemed like failure has become freedom. He no longer fights the current, no longer screams at the wind, no longer demands that life kneel before his plans. He walks quietly now, not in defeat, but in reverence, because he's seen the truth, that the river of life has always known where to go, with or without his hands on the wheel. This is the paradox Alan Watts pointed to again and again, that the very thing we think will destroy us is often what saves us, that when you release control, you don't fall into chaos, you fall into rhythm, into alignment, into the deeper pulse of existence that has been beating beneath your resistance all along. You are not the architect, you are not the commander, you are the unfolding itself, and that's not weakness, it's power of the most sincere kind. Now, when others look at him and ask why he seems so calm, so unbothered by uncertainty, he simply smiles, because he knows there is nothing to grasp, nothing to win, nothing to secure. There is only now, only breath, only the dance, and he's finally moving with it, not against it. For the first time, he doesn't need to be the main character. He doesn't even need a role. He's just here. And being here is enough. If this reflection brought you even a moment of stillness, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe, not to chase more answers, but to keep remembering what you already know deep down. Share this with someone who's tired of holding the wheel so tightly. And if you feel moved, leave a comment below. Tell us what part of your life you've stopped trying to control, or what you're just now learning to let go of. Because your story, your silence, your awakening, it might be the spark that frees another man from the same illusion.